December 17th, 1720. A man who once controlled the entire French economy climbs into an unmarked carriage in the dead of night, clutching a single diamond ring. 3 years earlier, he owned 21 estates. His banknotes were worth more than all the gold in Europe. Now, if the mob catches him, they'll rip him apart in the street. His name is John Law, and he's about to cross the Belgian border with nothing but the clothes on his back. The man who promised to save France has destroyed it instead. But here's what should terrify you. Every central bank in the world today is built on the same system John Law invented. The system that turned Paris into a slaughterhouse. The question is, are we living through the setup or the collapse? The year is 1715, and France is bleeding out. Louis XIV has just died after 72 years on the throne. He leaves behind a country culturally magnificent and financially obliterated. The national debt stands at 3 billion livres. The entire annual tax revenue is only 145 million. France isn't just broke, it's a corpse. Interest payments alone devour almost every coin the tax collectors scrape from the peasants. The economy has flatlined. Merchants can't trade because there's no money circulating. The crown passes to 5-year-old Louis XV, so real power lands with the regent, the Duke of Orleans. He's intelligent, hedonistic, and absolutely desperate. His advisors suggest the medieval playbook: declare bankruptcy, debase the currency. These solutions will crater France's credit for a century. The regent needs a miracle. And as fate would have it, a miracle worker has just arrived in Paris. His name is John Law. He's a Scotsman, tall, handsome, lethally charming. He's also a fugitive. Years earlier in London, he killed a man in a duel and fled the hangman's noose. For 2 decades, Law drifted across Europe's capitals, making his living at card tables. He's a professional gambler who understands odds, risk, and the psychology of greed better than any banker alive. But Law is more than a card sharp. He's a self-taught economist with a theory that will change the world. Watching gold and silver coins slide across gambling tables, he has an epiphany. Money is not gold and silver. Money is the tool by which wealth is exchanged, a medium. France's problem is that it doesn't have enough of the medium. France is suffocating from deflation. There aren't enough coins circulating to facilitate trade. A farmer with wheat and a weaver with cloth can't exchange because neither has silver. The economy is frozen. Law secures an audience with the desperate regent. He lays out a plan so radical it sounds like alchemy. Banish gold coins and replace them with paper money. Paper can be printed in any amount needed to stimulate the economy. If there's more money circulating, people will buy more goods, merchants will hire workers, the economy will grow, and the king can collect taxes to pay the debt. It sounds too good to be true, because it is, but the regent has no other options. In May 1716, Law establishes the Banque Générale, the first central bank in French history. The bank issues paper banknotes, and crucially, Law promises these notes are fully backed by gold and silver, redeemable at any time. At first, the French are skeptical, but Law ensures his paper notes are actually better than metal coins. Official silver coins fluctuate in value. Law's banknotes will always be redeemable for a fixed weight of silver. Suddenly, merchants prefer the paper. It's lighter, easier to transport, and stable. The paper money circulates, and just as Law predicted, the economy thaws. Trade picks up. The regent is delighted. The Scottish gambler is a genius. But this is only the first phase. The bank is just the engine. Now he needs a vehicle to absorb the massive government debt. Law looks across the Atlantic. France possesses a vast territory called Louisiana, stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada. To most Frenchmen, Louisiana is a mystery. To John Law, it's a blank canvas for projecting dreams of avarice. In 1717, Law convinces the regent to grant him a trading monopoly. He forms the Mississippi Company with exclusive rights to all trade and colonization in this American territory. The deal is simple. The company will develop Louisiana, find gold mines like the Spanish found in Mexico, establish tobacco plantations. Profits from this new world will flow back to France, enriching shareholders and saving the kingdom. Law now controls the national bank and the nation's most valuable overseas assets. He's ready to create the first modern stock market bubble. To make the Mississippi Company succeed, Law needs investors. But in 1717, Louisiana is nothing but a swamp. No cities, no mines, barely any settlers. So Law does what every promoter does when the product is lacking. He sells the dream. He launches an aggressive propaganda campaign. Hired illustrators create beautiful engravings showing not alligator-infested bayous, but a Garden of Eden. The images show natives offering French settlers massive chunks of gold and emeralds, fertile plains, mountains of silver gleaming in the sun. Law's message is simple. The Spanish found mountains of gold in Mexico. We found them in the Mississippi. All you need to do is buy stock. He releases the first shares at 500 livres each. But here's the stroke of genius. He allows investors to pay not just with gold or silver, but with government debt bonds. Thousands hold these worthless bonds, trading at massive discounts. Law tells them, "Give me your worthless debt, and I'll give you a share in a company that owns half of America." It's irresistible, a debt-for-equity swap on a national scale. The first issue sells out immediately. Law issues more shares, then more. To ensure the price keeps rising, he merges the bank and company. He uses the bank's printing presses to print money, which the bank lends to investors at low rates specifically to buy Mississippi shares. It's a perfect self-reinforcing loop. The bank prints money, people borrow, they buy shares, the price goes up, more people borrow to buy more shares. By 1719, Paris has descended into madness. The share price smashes through 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 livres. The center of this hurricane is a narrow street called the Rue Quincampoix, the 18th century's Wall Street, but far more chaotic. The street is so crowded that guards block both ends at night to clear the bodies. The social order evaporates. The only thing that matters is whether you own Mississippi stock. One legend tells of a hunchback who made a fortune renting out his back as a writing desk for brokers. Another tells of a woman who deliberately crashed her carriage near where Law dined just to speak with him about shares. Servants who invested meager wages suddenly find themselves richer than their masters. A new word is invented, millionaires. By late 1719, the share price hits 10,000 livres. The company is valued at more than all the gold and silver in Europe. Law is appointed Controller General of Finances. He controls tax collection, the mint, colonial trade, and the national debt. He is the entire economy. On paper, he saved France. The massive debt has vanished, converted into Mississippi shares. But behind the scenes, Law faces a terrifying problem. The hype is moving faster than reality. He's promised mountains of gold in Louisiana, but the colony is a disaster. To keep the stock price up, Law needs to show Louisiana is being populated, but no respectable Frenchman wants to move to a swamp. So Law turns to coercion. He sweeps Paris prisons, taking thieves, murderers, and debtors. He rounds up prostitutes and forces them to marry prisoners before dragging them onto ships. Of the thousands sent to Louisiana, less than 20% survive. The Garden of Eden is a graveyard. Back in Paris, Law suppresses these reports. He censors letters, bribes editors, and keeps the printing presses running hot. But a bubble is fragile. It relies entirely on faith. In late 1719, the cracks appear. Wealthy investors calculate the real value of Louisiana trade zero and compare it to the stock valuation. They realize it's a hallucination. They quietly sell their shares at the peak, collecting millions in paper notes. But they don't want paper. They want something real. They take their paper to the Banque Générale and demand gold and silver coin. At first, Law pays them. He has to. But as more millionaires cash out, the bank's vaults empty. One famous story involves the Prince de Conti, who sent 3 wagons demanding they be filled with gold. Law paid him, but was terrified. If just a few more princes did the same, the bank would break. Law begs the regent for help. He convinces him to pass tyrannical laws. They make it illegal to export gold from France, then illegal to own more than 500 livres in coin. Traditional money becomes contraband overnight. Police conduct warrantless searches. Servants are paid to inform on masters hiding gold. The prisons fill with people whose only crime is trying to save their life savings. For a moment, the terror works, but it creates a new monster, hyperinflation. Prices skyrocket. The cost of bread doubles, then triples. Millionaires who felt rich in December find their fortunes can barely buy dinner in March. Law tries to stabilize by pegging the stock price, declaring the bank will buy any share for 9,000 livers. It's a fatal mistake. The government is printing infinite money to buy worthless stock. The money supply explodes. Foreign merchants refuse French paper. Imports stop. Shortages begin. By May 1720, Law has created a financial apocalypse. On May 21st, he issues the infamous Edict of May, announcing that share values will be reduced from 9,000 to 5,000 livers, and paper notes will be cut in half. Law thinks this is sensible adjustment. He's catastrophically wrong. The public sees it as theft. The government admitting the money in their pockets is worth half its face value. Trust evaporates instantly. Paris explodes. The mob screams for Law's head. The regent, terrified, revokes the edict 6 days later, but it's too late. You cannot unring a bell. Law is stripped of his title and placed under house arrest. The shares plummet from 9,000 to 2,000. In July, the final tragedy occurs. The bank announces it will exchange tiny amounts of paper for silver, but only for the poor. On July 17th, thousands gather outside the bank, maids, laborers, shoemakers, hoping to get coins for bread. The crowd grows too large, panic sets in. In the crush, 15 people are trampled to death. Behold the fruit of your system. The young King Louis XV, only 10, looks out and sees his subjects waving dead bodies. It's a trauma that will haunt the monarchy for the rest of the century. John Law realizes his life is in danger. The experiment is over. As autumn approaches, he knows he must leave. In December 1720, under cover of darkness, Law slips out of the palace. He carries only a few hundred gold coins and a single diamond ring, all that remains of an empire valued at billions. He flees toward Belgium. He will never set foot in France again. Back in Paris, the government faces catastrophe. The economy is littered with billions of worthless paper notes. Commerce has stopped. The regent launches a brutal process called the visa, a financial witch hunt. Over 500,000 households are investigated. If you were a profiteer, they confiscate your wealth. If you were duped, you get bonds worth a fraction of your loss. The process culminates in a massive bonfire. The government piles billions of banknotes into cages in the Place Vendôme and sets them ablaze before a cheering crowd. The French people watch their life savings burn. The immediate depression is severe, but the long-term damage is more profound. Law has poisoned the well of finance for generations. The French develop a deep cultural hatred of paper money, stock markets, and central banks. While Britain builds a sophisticated financial system, funding the Royal Navy and Industrial Revolution, France moves backward, hoarding gold under floorboards. This financial backwardness has lethal consequences. Throughout the 18th century, France fights expensive wars against Britain. Britain funds them by borrowing through its trusted central bank. France has to squeeze peasants with taxes. This inability to manage debt eventually kills the French Empire. By 1789, the crown is bankrupt again, crushed by the cost of helping the American Revolution. The result is the French Revolution. In a very real sense, the guillotine that severed Louis XVI's head was sharpened by John Law's failure 69 years earlier. And what of the man himself? Law spends his final 9 years as a wanderer. He drifts to London, Munich, finally Venice. He lives in a small rented apartment, spending evenings in casinos, gambling for small stakes. A man who once bought half of America, now playing cards for the price of wine. He never stops believing in his system, writing letters begging to return, insisting his ideas were sound. They never reply. In 1729, John Law catches pneumonia. He dies poor and alone in Venice. Here lies that celebrated Scotsman, that peerless calculator who by the rules of algebra sent France to the poorhouse. But Law was not a con man. He was a tragic visionary. He was right about the future. The world eventually did move to paper money, central banks, and credit economies. Every dollar, euro, and pound today is a descendant of his idea. We live in the world he imagined. His mistake was ignoring human nature. He forgot that money is not just math, it is trust. He proved that while you can print money, you cannot print value. You cannot print confidence, and you certainly cannot print reality. The Mississippi Bubble remains the ultimate cautionary tale of financial hubris. It reminds us that when the line between investment and gambling blurs, disaster is inevitable. Whenever someone promises infinite wealth with no risk, the end result is always a bonfire. Now here's what should keep you awake at night. Law's bank printed 5 times more paper money than it had gold reserves. Today, the Federal Reserve holds about $450 billion in assets against over $2 trillion in currency circulation. The European Central Bank's balance sheet has expanded by over 7 trillion euros since 2008. We're not just repeating Law's experiment. We're running it at a scale that would make him look like an amateur. The only difference is that in 1720, when the system collapsed, people could flee to gold. Today, when the entire global financial system is built on the same paper promises, where exactly do you flee to? The question you need to ask yourself is this: when the history books are written about our era, will they say we learned from his mistake? Or will they say we were arrogant enough to believe it could never happen to us?